Hey there friends, I'm Russell and this is Descended Masters channel, because of course we are all Descended Masters on that journey of remembering who we are. Right here. So today's topic is about the ego, and the question is, do you have to get over your ego before you can be enlightened or be self-realized or even talk about spiritual subjects? So the reason I'm talking about this today is because a few days ago I posted a video called The Power of Now Trap. And in this I deal with a spiritual trap that one can fall into when following a teaching like Eckhart's Power of Now, but also it's not taking aim at him, but merely at highlighting on the journey of this. There's a certain difficult point where one can fall into a trap. We have to explain the trap. What is a trap first? A trap is simply a place where your attention gets focused, perhaps for longer than it should. So for instance, any new idea can be it's like a medicine. It's like any helpful ideas is wonderful if it helps you to become more, to become better at what you do, to have a greater understanding. So in this sense, that teaching can be very helpful. But now, all teachings, I dare say, or all understandings of teachings will have a point where if you stay holding on to that understanding, that which was once a medicine becomes a trap, which will hold you. So that is some of the context of why I'm talking about traps, and perhaps it's a good idea to introduce the idea of traps a bit more, which is why I'm talking about it now. And I'll get to the ego thing in a moment. So that is some of the context. And to be clear, I'm not criticizing Eckhart. I'm saying that there's a trap that if you look at quite enlightened teachers and you sense the bliss and the peace that they emanate, and they talk about something like the now, or whatever word they have for it, if you assume that you can only be in that thing, like the now, I'm just using the now because it's a very topical example, the now. When you're the now, you'll only feel these positive emotions. So the trap is that when you feel negative emotion, that you feel that you've fallen out of the now. So that is only the point I'm making. That is not necessarily true. That the now includes all, the light and the dark. Now on this channel we're talking about light workers and awakening ones. So the history of the light worker really is one of integration, integrating light and dark. So the now, it's important for us to really get that the now is that shadow and the light, the both, and what transcends them. So the now really is that the presence that is including your unprocessed feelings, what you feel is uncomfortable, what you feel is negative, all those that you might be tempted to want to put away or to self-improve yourself away from. Okay, so the trap in there is just don't get stuck in limiting yourself, that you have to feel a certain way to realize that you're in the now. Okay. So now in the video comments of this video, some people enjoyed it and some people took issue with the fact that I appeared to be criticizing Eckhart, and there was quite a lot of feedback for me to absorb, and a fair amount of it was saying that I was extremely unenlightened and I was speaking from my ego, and that essentially I should shut up and sit down and do my work, because I was clearly not in the now and clearly coming from ego. Now, of course, when you get feedback like that, first it strikes you, but then, you know, one faces it. So within any feedback, positive or negative, There will be some things that are maybe not true and other things that are true. So I took that constructive feedback and meditated on it to see what was true. Was there ego in me in putting that video out, and in my thought processes as a whole? So when I look into it, yes, there is ego. And because after all, why am I making videos? Why did I start a channel? Why do I think that I have anything to say on the subject? Why does negative feedback affect me negatively? Am I only looking for positive feedback? What happens when I receive positive feedback? And when I look into all those responses, yes, ego is operating. So now my next inquiry was, well, if ego is here so clearly, perhaps I should follow that advice and shut up. So I looked at that and well, that's a valid compliment. That's a valid feedback, and I could very well do that. But then I thought, well, if I follow that and shut up, then the decision to do that is also, in a sense, coming from ego, because everything that's happening in the mind now will be ego, will have ego in it, drenched in it throughout. So pretty much everything you do is filtered at least partially through ego. Now the question arises then, if you're not perfectly without ego, should you really shut up? Do you have a right to speak on spiritual topics when ego is perhaps still at work in you? And I did experiment with the idea of shutting up for about a day. And that also did not feel to me genuine. That felt to me like something was shutting me up. A part of me was shutting me up. And that is not freedom. So the feeling of that, if I weigh in the feeling of that, it is also not free. So what is more free? What is the freedom? The lighter the ego, the more free we'll feel. So what is a more free feeling? Well, so that, well, I will play with continuing to speak on these subjects, knowing that ego is in there and that has to be good enough. Now this led me to an insight which I would love to share with you, if you will stay with it a moment, which is that we cannot wait for ego to be gone. We cannot wait for a particular state of being or mind to appear before we show up fully as who we are. We can no longer wait. I cannot hope. If I put Eckhart Tolle there and others, I follow many people, he's one of them, I really love and respect. But if I must put myself there, I will only speak when I've reached that level, then I won't speak. Because that's not going to happen. Unless by miracle. Same with the other teachers that I followed my whole life. Now I've realized that, having been on a spiritual journey since the age of 12, I'm now 55, that whatever ignorance, people so helpfully pointed out to me, whatever ignorance remains in me will probably continue to remain here. And I have at last found peace with that. And this experience of having this feedback was actually wonderfully, it pushed me into a deeper knowing of what I'm doing here and the message. And the message is, you are okay. You are divinely okay exactly how you are showing up, with your ego in place, with the wounds in place, with your unhealed stuff, with your shadow, with everything, because it's not going to change greatly unless you have a major enlightenment. But don't count on that. There's another trap I will talk about, maybe not today, but I'll mention it, the non-duality trap. Okay, don't be alarmed by the word trap now, because I'm not criticizing anybody. There's a trap you can fall into if you follow the non-duality teachings, which is that I will be like those teachers who they're walking across a park in London and suddenly the heavens open, the light shines, they fall to their knees, and there's enlightenment. And from that moment on, everything is different. The trap is thinking that you have to have that moment of awakening. That is true for some, yes, but for others, I've said in that other video, it's the scenic route to enlightenment. So we're going step by slow step. Why? So that we can savor it, so that we can make peace with this ego, so we can make peace with this unresolved stuff, the human stuff. Somebody on that video made a beautiful comment, which I could actually do a whole video on, and he said, this now is the Christ consciousness, and it is to do with the holding of the light in the dark. So I said, yes, fully, I'm in agreement with that. It is the Christ consciousness, and you and us who suffer with this, light and dark mix. We are living a crucifixion of daily life. You're on the cross. You cannot get off that cross. So you're in physical pain. You have your unresolved stuff. The Romans are right there. But also you have the divine. So what I'm saying here is you have your ego. We can call them the Romans. Hey, those pesky chaps who don't understand. That's just your stuff. And maybe it doesn't go home. Like the Romans don't go home. Not for a long time. Maybe your stuff doesn't get cleared. But your divinity shines through. Your divine shines through. That's what I'm saying here. Do not wait for your ego to disappear. It can be a very long time. And guess what? It doesn't have to. It does not have to, my friends. All it takes is awareness of your nature, which is shining through all around, infusing the ego message. The ego, it is infusing it as well with divine. You're on the cross, nothing you can do. You're human, you're in pain. You have thoughts that are not the most pure. You have understanding that is not the most deep. But yet you can be in touch with divine. And then you have the humility to say that I am a sinner, in that sense of I am a sinner and that I have ego. And I live in this animal body and I am imperfect and I haven't got it yet. But yet I am in touch with divine. Yet something is aware of a peace and a bliss that comes from beyond. It is like around, it is around us. It is holding and infiltrating the ego. There need be no separation between the ego and your enlightened state. So bring it into this now, that which is unhealed, unresolved, and might not ever be, not in this lifetime maybe. So you can be one of the Christs of the new era, of this new day, the ordinary Christs. That's why I also call it the crucifixion of ordinary life. Very plain, ordinary life, but you are living as divine and human. You don't need a big waking experience. Right now, even as watching this video, if it doesn't irritate you to death, or even if it does, this might be the best moment to tune into what is aware behind the scenes, what is aware of that irritation. That awareness, if you tune into it more, just fall back into it. Ooh. What happens when you do that? You will see, you will feel your divine, that peace which passes all human understanding, is there waiting for you to recognize it in small little ways, to rest into it with your ego, with all your pain, with everything. So that is why I am still speaking, and for now will continue to speak through my ignorance, and using my ignorance as a vantage point from which to address that which meets my ignorance. In other words, that where you also feel perhaps ignorant and not knowing and in suffering and in pain. And if others who are not ignorant in some ways, are not in pain, then you'll walk on by from this message. It's not even for you. If you have not fallen into the trap of which I'm speaking, the message is not for you. The message is for the person who has fallen into the trap. And if you don't like trap, we can call it just an error of thinking, or just a way station, or just a pause where we have lingered perhaps too long and have forgotten how to move forward. The message is there just for that, and it comes from my ignorance of having walked that route. So I'm the guy who stands by the road where another great teacher perhaps has walked and said, listen, I've walked, you see this patch here? It took me 10 years to go through that patch. It looks like normal road, okay, but it's quicksand. Now, you might want to walk around. That's all I'm saying. Walk around or prepare yourself, because there is quicksand. And then you'll walk on the other side and say, you're quite ignorant because you fell into it. I said, it's fine, because you walk on that side of the road, you're fine. My message is not for you. My message comes from ignorance, which I'm using to point to bliss. The bliss will be in the ignorance. That is the key thing. We are in the crucifixion of ordinary life. The bliss and the ignorance will be together. Do not wait for your enlightenment. We don't need it. I made another video 2 weeks ago called Is This Your Last Incarnation, or the last incarnation of light workers? And has this sense of we do not have to wait for some perfection. This can be the last life, the last of a series of lives on this earth. If you've come from a long history with this earth of a certain nature, I won't talk about it because I've talked about it, the history of the light, the dark history of the light worker, right? If you've come from that lineage of a very long history on earth, you will think that you're quite unenlightened now because you have a lot of burdens and baggage. Right now, the light worker, those who I'm speaking to only, okay? If this is you, listen. Those who are feeling weary and that they'll never get it. Those who are feeling deeply mired in their ignorance. You feel you know something, and yet you feel betrayed by your own ignorance. Be of good cheer, because that is the moment before the dawn. It is the end of a cycle. You are tired and weary because there's nothing more to be done. You are not required to be enlightened any more than you are now. There's nothing beyond this moment of how you have to be. Just be aware of everything that is happening in you, because the part that is aware is outside of it and witnessing. So let go of all that judgment, and let go even of the judgment of the judgment. There's no way different you have to be. This is it. So if you can get this is it, this with the ignorance intact, with your ego exactly as it is. Imagine it never gets better. But you can shine through. Your light can shine through the ignorance. So your ego can be like, it can be surrounded, like softened, like oiled with this bliss of your nature, so that you can be like Jesus on that cross. Spirit can speak through that pain. If you do not have a physical body, if you do not, then there's nothing to do here. The whole purpose is to feel it, to be in it, to not be perfect. Right. So we don't have to be perfect. I'm not here, I'm giving myself the liberty to not be perfect, not by a long shot, and I'm giving myself the liberty to have ego here. And the message is that you shine through that. And that is that enlightenment of this new Aquarian age. Ordinary, humble, waking, walking, illumination in the mud of being human. That's it. Okay.